France has had a long and complex relationship with its former African colonies. Many of these colonies gained independence in the 1950s and 1960s, but France still holds significant political, economic, and military ties in her former African colonies. France has intervened militarily in several conflicts over the past few decades, often to support governments friendly to French interests. However, there have been discussions in recent times about France's potential backscaling from its involvement in certain parts of Africa, such as the Sahel, West, and Central Africa. Under President Emmanuel Macron's leadership, the French government has sought to redefine its role and presence in Africa since 2017. In today's video, we shall be looking at how France is gradually withdrawing from African affairs, and this is characterized as a shameful exit by many observers. Any suggestion of Macron leaving Africa in shame implies a significant geopolitical and diplomatic crisis. France's departure from African countries is also related to failed military interventions, political fallouts, or tensions with African leaders. Before we ride on, subscribe to the New Tourist channel and turn on notifications if you aren't yet part of our community. In February, President Macron tasked former Minister Jean-Marie Bockel with working out the new modalities of the French military presence in African countries. In this plan, Paris planned to keep around 100 troops in Ivory Coast on the southern coast of West Africa, down from 600 troops, and around 300 personnel in Chad, in north-central Africa, down from 1,000. In February 2023, President Macron reiterated a noticeable reduction of French troop presence in Africa, as anti-French sentiments kept running high in some former colonies. Russia has seized this opportunity and is vying for greater influence in Africa. France is still planning to reduce its military presence in West and Central Africa to around 600 troops, and this is in line with President Macron's plans to limit the French military footprint in the region. According to a plan currently under discussion with African partners, France intends to drastically limit its so-called preposition forces in Africa. It is said that France will keep only around 100 troops in Gabon and Central African Republic, down from 350 today, and around 100 in Senegal in West Africa, down from 350 as well. The reduced French presence in Africa will be periodically expanded based on the needs of local partners. Until 2 years ago, in addition to around 1,600 forces pre-deployed in West Africa and Gabon, France had over 5,000 troops in the Sahelian part of Africa, as part of the Barkhane anti-jihadist operation. Bear in mind that France has been gradually pushed out by military governments that came to power in Mali in 2021, Burkina Faso in 2022, and Niger in 2023. The decision taken by President Macron to withdraw troops from Niger in 2022 led to worsening attacks from jihadist groups. Until the coup, Niger had remained a key security partner for France and the United States, which used her as a base to help in the regional fight with groups linked to al-Qaeda. This Islamic State has killed thousands and displaced millions across the Sahel and beyond. A document marking the official end of France's military engagement with Niger was signed by both parties in the capital Niamey in December 2023. The last group of seemingly tired French soldiers and backpacks boarded a military plane that took off shortly after. Following the strategies of Malian and Burkinabe military leaders, Niger's self-appointed military leader also ordered the government to expel French ambassador Sylvain Ide. At that moment, diplomatic relations with Niger became so tense, causing a closure of the French embassy there following the military leader's instructions. When the French ambassador was leaving Niger, the population took to the streets shouting, "Go thief, go thief. What a shame for Emmanuel Macron. Long live free Africa." The pullout from Mali and Burkina Faso, where its soldiers were supporting the Sahel nations to battle a long-running armed rebellion, has come on the back of a wave of local hostility. France no longer has an African policy. President Macron, during one of his visits to Burkina Faso in 2017, told Burkinabe students that he wanted to form a generation that has never known Africa as a colonized continent. The meeting was marked by a memorable incident. When questioned on the issue of frequent power cuts in Burkina Faso, President Macron responded, You speak to me like I am a colonial power, but I don't want to look after electricity in Burkina Faso. That's the job of your president. He told his then Burkinabe counterpart, Roch-Marc Kaboré, that he is of a generation that doesn't tell Africans what to do. The age of Françafrique is well over. Françafrique is a favorite target of Pan-Africanists, who believe that, after the wave of decolonization in 1960, France propped up dictators in its former colonies in exchange for access to resources and military bases. Macron and his predecessor, François Hollande, have previously declared that their former policies towards Africa are dead and that France has no intention of meddling in sovereign affairs. Note that during a visit to Gabon in March, Macron spoke of the challenges of mobilizing international finance as he and the Gabonese Minister of Environment, Lee White, toured the Raponda Walker Arboretum, a protected coastal area north of Libreville. In response, the minister said, "People see little of it on the ground because the systems are imperfect." Last year, the Agency for the Safety of Air Navigation in Africa and Madagascar announced that the military rulers had banned French aircraft from flying over Niger's airspace. This happened immediately before Ambassador Sylvain Ide was asked to leave the country, after the overthrow of President Bazoum. The French government refused to leave after a 48-hour ultimatum was made. They refused to comply and recognized the military regime as legitimate. The Economic Community of West Africa states threatened military action to restore President Bazoum, but so far, its threats, which were strongly supported by France, have not transformed into action. There has been indeed a long period, roughly corresponding to the Cold War, when France used a certain amount of skullduggery and military muscle to foster its interests in French Africa. But no one can dismiss either the fact that, for the last quarter century, the message from Paris has been that those days, officially, are at least over. Gone are the automatic requests from French soldiers to back up a teetering autocrat. Gone are the million backhanders that helped finance French political parties. The words we often hear today are democratization, empowerment, cooperation, and engagement with the young. But certainly, Africans are not turning back anymore. Maybe it would be naive to pretend that all is above board and that there are still nefarious pressures and sweeteners passing back and forth between Paris and Francophone capitals. It is a wild exaggeration to claim that French influence in Africa is anything like it used to be. Let's look at the case of Gabon, which was often regarded as the emblem of corrupt post-colonialism. It is certainly true that the deposed President Ali Bongo's father, Omar Bongo, was seen as one of ours by successive French presidents. If French reach is still so great, how is it that Ali Bongo made moves to pull Gabon out of the French dominance to the point of actually joining the Commonwealth in 2022? The Bongo's amassment of wealth and its secretion in Paris was no doubt legendary. But was it not the action of French anti-corruption judges and unimpeded politicians that led to its exposure and to proceedings against members of the Bongo family, arguably pushing Ali into the arms of Englishmen? Countries like Cameroon, which were strongly attached to France even after independence, are gradually understanding the need to be totally free from the shackles of colonialism. The country is instead seeking more expertise and knowledge to boost its economy. President Paul Biya attended the Russia-Africa Summit in July 2023 in St. Petersburg, smiling alongside Vladimir Putin. Africa has been globalizing. Most presidents of former French colonies in Africa have the world in their waiting rooms: Turks, Russians, Israel, and even allies of France, like Germany and the US. Oppositions in Africa imagine that France is still all-powerful. In reality, while France was doing all the dirty police work, its rivals were sweeping up the contracts. France has also suspended military operations with the Central African Republic, accusing its government of failing to stop a massive anti-French disinformation campaign. The question is no longer whether relations between France and its former colonies will change. The real question is whether Paris will be able to shape this change, or if it will be a mere bystander to a transformation that is largely driven by African actors. When President Emmanuel Macron came to power, he was undoubtedly aware of France's reputation in Africa. His response has always been to make a clearly recognizable effort in crafting a new narrative to demonstrate his political will for changing relations with France's former colonies in Africa. A reform initiative of significant importance was the announcement of the abolition of the West African franc CFA currency by President Macron and his Ivorian counterpart Alassane Ouattara in 2019. The importance of the move lies primarily in the political sphere. In West Africa, the currency is primarily seen as a colonial relic and a constant reminder that the CFA states still have no monetary sovereignty almost 60 years after independence. This makes the CFA franc a highly visible symbol of continued post-colonial influence and paternalism. In recent years, the currency has become a focal point of resentment and social protest. Macron, therefore, links the reform above all to the goal of diffusing the increasing criticism of France in Africa. Increasing military coups in former French colonies in Africa have often strained France's diplomatic and economic ties in the region. This has forced the French government to reevaluate and renegotiate agreements in Africa, up to the level of withdrawal of troops, as you have just watched in this video. There is an adage that says, "No earthly thing shall last forever," and it is clear in what is happening in Africa at this moment. France's dramatic withdrawal significantly affects her long-standing influence and interest across the continent. Do you think France will ever have a great impact on the African continent again after all that is going on? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you enjoyed watching, then do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the New Tourist channel. Turn on notifications too so you get notified whenever we upload videos like this. Thanks for watching and see you in our next video.